get started. All right, just a brief review. We started a little bit of chapter 20th last Friday, so who remembers just a little bit what we covered? Chapter 20th, we're moving on toward short-term business decisions. But we haven't actually made any decisions or discussed any strategies yet. We just talked about simply the concept of information, and specifically what are the information that are relevant to decisions, what are the information that are considered irrelevant. Okay, so remember the keys in the first section of chapter 20th. Last Friday we went over the first section, simply talking about the nature of information. So sometimes different activities, costing information and revenues, sometimes they're just not relevant to specific decisions that we're making in the future. So we do not necessarily need to look at all the cost information for various types of products, but if we're just deciding, for example, which product, whether we want to outsource a department or whether we want to process something further, we just need to look at the relevant information that relates to, specifically, that links to those decision-making process. Okay, so relevant information, we have some of the characteristics of relevant information. Those are the costs that affects future decisions, not the costs that you readily paid for last purchase transaction of a truck. Remember? We talked about a truck example. If we want to purchase a new truck, we probably also want to trade in our old truck. So the information that is relevant to that decision, where to purchase the truck, where to trade in the truck, depends on what money we're getting in the future and what's the money that we're actually paying for purchasing the truck. It's not relevant to any of the information of the old truck purchasing transaction because those are the cost information that you readily made in the past and doesn't affect this current decision. Okay, other irrelevant information, for example, if it's a fixed cost that occurs no matter what. If you trade in this truck, whether you purchase it from this vendor or the other, you still have necessary fixed costs that always occur, which is irrelevant to this decision making because that part of the cost doesn't change. So those are considered irrelevant costs. Okay, so last week we also talked about the cell phone example. Remember, you want to purchase iPhone 5, or you can purchase it from AT&T or from your friends if they have an excessive one that they're not using. The cost you may be purchasing these different iPhones from different vendors could be different. So this is the information that you need to collect to help you make that decision. So to sum up, the keys to making these short-term decisions that we'll be introducing in this chapter, these six different decision makings, all of them surrounds on these two keys. First of all, you just need to use the relevant information. Sometimes fixed costs doesn't need to be considered because it occurs no matter what. There's also some portion of fixed costs that you could be able to avoid, so those are still relevant information. Other keys, contribution margin approach. So remember that last chapter we break down cost into variable, into fixed. This is useful for all these decision makings that is introduced in this chapter. So you may be determining what is the contribution margin for this product, for the other product, which ones are higher, which type of product that you may want to emphasize more in the product mix decisions. Okay, so all these 6 decisions seems a lot to consider in details when you go through the chapter, but really the theme of all these decisions surrounds on these 2. What is the relevant information on the cost and revenues that you will be paying or receiving later on? What is the contribution margin you're getting from these decisions? How does it change among different alternatives? And then basically what we're doing here for all these 6 decisions is a cost-benefit analysis. What we're paying weighing against what we're receiving. Is the cost that we're paying really worth it compared against the benefit we're getting? Is the profit high enough to cover the cost? So this is the general theme of all these decisions. Okay, so before we go into details, you have to keep this in mind. What we're trying to do here is evaluate cost and benefit. If cost is higher than benefit, obviously we won't be accepting any of the decisions later on we introduce in this chapter. Okay, so the first two decisions in the second section here, so this was an example we went over on relevant information, irrelevant information. First two